So the crowd has finally spoken, and here we are doing this tutorial. So yay! A bunch of you guys requested it, and here we are. And yep, you can see my face now. I invested a bit in this Logitech camera, and here we are. So from now on, most of my videos will you'll be able to see me. Yeah, and I really don't have a lot of experience talking to you guys in front of this, but hopefully things will pick up soon. Anyway, the point of this tutorial is for this thing. So basically we'll be making this thing, and it is, as you may have guessed, it is super procedural, meaning that if you change the scale of the cube, it doesn't matter, it will loop, so no worries there. I'll just set that to 1 because my OCDs are kicking in right now, and a lot of stuff which you can mess around with, really. Yeah, it's entirely up to you, and as the tutorial progresses, a lot of these factors will make a lot of sense. So two things, first is this, second is it's super hot, so my fan is blazing up there, so any background noise, it's because of that, and my turtles which will be making noise over there. Other than that, I think we're good to go. So I'm just gonna leave this in as it is for now, because I'm pretty sure I'll forget things, or you know what, I have faith in myself for I don't know, somehow. Alright, so new scene. I'm using Blender version 3.2 beta, but you can of course use Blender version 3.1. Below that, I would not recommend it. Always try to keep yourself updated, but you know what? Just watch the tutorial and then try it out in different versions. 2.5, for example. Just kidding, you can't. There's no geonodes in that. But anyway, let's just hit new, select this geometry nodes input, and hit X to delete that. And now we don't have anything, so let's just add a cube over here, and then just shift alt left click so that you just directly connect that over here. Anyway, now here's how things are gonna go, right? So I'll just look from my camera. So basically what we want to do, or what we want to achieve in this tutorial, is to just keep on rotating, and the way we're gonna do that is first we'll rotate it like this, right? So yeah, as you can see, Oscar winning drawing, and then like this. So hopefully you guys are getting what I'm trying to say. I'll try to draw again. So we'll try to rotate it like this, and once that's done, we'll rotate it over here like this. And it is not that complicated to do. And in the video you may have noticed that the cube is rotating not from the center of the cube, but from one of the bottom, sorry about that. It is rotating from one of the bottom corners of the cube, right? So right now, if I add a transform node over here, and if I rotate it on the X or Y axis, you'll notice that it is rotating from the center of the cube, and we don't really want that. So how do we change the center? How do we change the pivot point of it? Well, maybe there are a bunch of ways out there. I don't know. I ended up using this one. So let's just add in a mesh line node. It's because of my my mic being right over here. I really can't see what I'm typing. Oh god. Alright, anyway, let's add a mesh line node. I'll set the count to 1, and offset, it could be 0, it doesn't really matter because it's just a single point. And now I'll add in an instance on points node directly to it. Alright, and then I will use this cube as the instance, and I'll connect this to the geometry output. And you'll notice that nothing has changed. The cube is exactly where it is, but now what's going on here is that the origin point, or the anchor point of this cube, is going to be wherever this point lies. Okay, so that's the main difference, and that's going to make a big difference, meaning that we can move the cube however we like, wherever we like, and it will rotate, scale, transform depending on where this mesh line or where this point is. All right, so to prove that, I'll add a transform node before, right? So before this cube is getting instance on this instance on points node, I'll add transform node, and I'll just move it up by 0.5. Right, so now you'll see it has moved by 0.5 meters. And now if I add a transform node again, and by the way, I have just saved it on one of my quick favorites. I haven't, Jesus. Okay, I won't waste my time doing that. But anyway, so now if I rotate it on the X or Y axis, you can see that it is rotating from this point right over here. So you can see how big of a difference this is making, and this is exactly what we're going to do. So basically, right, let's go over here and let's move view it from the top. All right, so right now the anchor point, or the point, is over here, and basically we want the cube to either rotate from this side, sorry, this point or this point. I'm gonna choose this point, you know, because we want to rotate it like this. Hopefully that makes tad bit more sense. Let me just get my eraser and increase the radius. All right, anyway, cool. So the goal of this transform, or what we have to do right now, is to move this cube over here so that it will be lining up exactly here. Therefore we can rotate the cube from this corner. This doesn't really make sense, but hopefully it will now. So we have already moved it on the y-axis, so we just need to move it, sorry about that, on the x and y. So let's just move it on the x by 0.5 it is, and on the y-axis 0.5. And now you can see that the cube is exactly here, and this corner is exactly where our newly added point is. So now if I view it through here, and now if I try to rotate it on the y-axis, you can see that it does the flip. So all cool, all cool, all cool over here. And one more thing, for those of you who are wondering, you know, why did I choose 0.5, 0.5, 0.5? Well, it is because the size, the scale of the cube is set to 1, so we're just moving it by the half of its scale. So yes, you can make it dependent. So let's just add a value node and set that to 1. And I'm not going to separate this because for this effect it is very important that the cube is scaled uniformly, right? So I'm just going to set this to 1, and then I'll drag in a, you know what, I'll just drag it here. So I'll add a multiply node, and this is a cool new feature, by the way, right? So I hopefully you guys are used to it. If not, just go over here, add a math node and set this to multiply. But anyway, right now we have that, and multiplying it by 0.5 or dividing it by 2 is just the same thing. So I'm just going to choose multiply by 0.5, and I'll connect that right over here. So nothing has changed, but now if I change the scale, you'll notice that the cube stays exactly where it is. So that is that, and now it's time to do the rotation animation. Cool. So now we can do it over here, right? We can use this, but just for organization purposes, I'm just going to use this transform node. All right, so let's connect a Combinex Wizard over here, because as you remember, we will be modifying the y-axis individually. Okay, and for those of you who have watched my previous tutorials, you guys may have some idea about what I'm going to do. So I'll just pull a pane or a tab, whatever it is over here, and I'll set it to timeline, and I'll set the animation into 60. Doesn't matter, just press the home key over there. All right, cool. So I'm gonna add in a scene time node, and the scene time node contains this frame value, which is the equivalent of adding in a value node right over here, and just typing in hash frame, right? So as the frame count increases, the number is put over here, or it can be interpreted over here. So that's just this. If I connect that to the y-axis right over here, you'll see that nothing has changed, but as I move, it is doing its thing, right? Pretty weird render on its own, but we are not interested in that. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to first of all remap this frame value, because currently, first of all, it is going way too fast, and I'll get to that, like why it's happening. For those of you, some of you may already know why this is happening, but anyway. All right, so let's add in a map range node. All right, cool. And you guys may have noticed that as soon as I added a node here, it just went over there, like the nodes shifted, and that is because in the view we have auto offset selected. Sometimes it is useful, sometimes it's not. So what I'm going to do is go over here, right click, add it to quick shortcuts. So if I'm just going to disable it from this point on, because the node tray is going to get a tad bit big. Anyway, so what is this map range node going to do? So basically we're going to tell it that from frame 0, so I'll just start the animation at 0. Right, so from frame 0 to frame 30, we want it to go from 0 to 90 degrees. So we want it to flip by 90 degrees. So if I move it, you'll notice that, whoa, that's not happening. In fact, it's doing some crazy things. And the reason why this is happening is because Blender is expecting us to feed it values in radians, right? So that's what Blender expects. I don't know why it's not it's not in degrees. That's just how many of the 3D softwares, even like P5JS or those generative art softwares or websites, that's what they need. But luckily for us, we have in the math node, we have an option to which is the 2 radians option, which basically whatever value we put in here, it will convert that to radians. So now if I hit play, you'll notice that it is doing, but it's doing the opposite way, so it has to be minus 90. So now if I hit play, that happens. So from frame 0 to frame 30, it completes a 90-degree rotation, and that basically just completes our phase 1 animation. So hit Ctrl J, F2, and just type in phase 1. All right, looking good. So that is our phase 1 animation. All right, and now from here on, so that was a bit fast. So from here on, we'll be working on the second phase, which is rotating it like this, which is going to be somewhat tricky. All right, so why is that going to be tricky? Well, essentially at frame 30, right, the cube will be over here, and you might be thinking, you know what, let's add a transform node and rotate it on the x-axis. It's not going to do that, and the reason why, well, you guessed it, the anchor point is over here, and we really don't want that. So basically what we want is for the anchor point to be over here or over here. I'm going to go with here, just I don't know, no reason at all. I'm just going to go over here, although if you do it over here, it will rotate just fine. So the point is we have to get our anchor point over here. So we'll just do the same trick we did before, right? And that is adding in a mesh line and an instance on points node. So I'm just going to select these 2 nodes and hit Ctrl Shift D. There we go. And what I'm going to do now is I'll delete this, and I'll use this transform, the one which did the whole rotation thing, as the instance, and I'll connect that over here to the geometry node output. As you can see, nothing has changed. The animation, it's still working fine. So now let's just add a transform here again, and let's just bring the cube over here, right? So that this corner right over here gets to be the anchor or pivot point. All right, so let's just move it on the x-axis by 1 meter, and on the y-axis by, it's going to be -1 meter, and there we go. So look at that. But all right, so from here on out, you can animate it from 2 different ways, right? So as you can see, this animation is already there, and after frame 30 or 30, yeah, after frame 30, if you rotate it on the x-axis, you can see that it does the job, right? So you can take it from here, but for those of you who are having big OCDs, like they're onto you, like they're they're screwing you with your head, so you want the cube to retain its original position, so where it was earlier, and to do that, it is just as simple. So what we need to do is, so this animation right here, so it just moved, the cube just moved over here because of this transform, so we just have to nullify it, and we're going to nullify it by moving the point itself. So I'm going to add a transform node over here, and I'll just move it on the x-axis by -1 and on the y-axis by +1. Right, so there we go, and now it just rotates just fine after the frame 30, or even before that. If you take a look, it rotates from that point. All right, anyway, but we have a tiny bit of problem now. If I set the scale to 2, right, and if I try to rotate it, you can see that it doesn't rotate, and that is because these values will have to be updated. So you know what, instead of just digging in again and just doing it all on our own and making our job hectic, why not we make them dependent? So what I'm going to do is set this back to 1, shift right click drag like this over here, and I'll just delete that, add a group input node over here, connect that over here, right, and then hit N over here, go to the group properties. On the input, let's just type in cube scale. There you go. So this is a parameter that we can control, the cube scale. And over here, you can notice that this cube scale is pretty much the same over here. So it's 1, this is 1, it is 1. It's just some of them are just multiplied by 1. Yeah, so -1. So some of them are -1, some of them are +1. So why not just add in a Combinex Wizard node right over here, and I'll add a group input node here as well. So over here, for the point, you can see that the x, it requires a -1. So I'll just connect that over here, and I'll just quickly add in a math node, move that thing over here, and set this to multiply, and the value will be -1. Sorry, not point, just -1. And for the y, it just requires a +1. So I'll just connect that over here. As you may have guessed, nothing has changed because really nothing has changed. Then I'll duplicate this, right? And now here the X is positive, so I'll just connect that over here, and the Y is -1. So I'll just connect that thing right over here, and I'll connect that just like that. Cool. So now, oh yes, need to save this. All right, so I'll just go to the tutorial folder. Where is it? Okay, I guess desktop at tutorial flip v2. I tried to record yesterday, but I ended up messing up. So yeah, here we are doing it again. All right, cool. So now if I set the scale to, let's say 2, and the rotations will work just fine, but 1 is fine for now. All right, cool. So that is that. And you know what? First of all, I'll just spin this, right? So these things. So whenever I click outside of the GeoNode, so any object, these things will just stay there. So first of all, let me just quickly change a few settings. I'll set this to 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. Go to the camera, set the mode to orthographic, and I'll zoom in quite a bit. And under the, I guess, viewport display, set the passe parto. What the fuck is this? No idea how to spell that, but just set that to 1, right? And yeah, I think that's it. Maybe I'll shift it on the Y a bit. Again, just mess around with it, and I'll set the rendering to cycles, GPU. That's a lot of samples, so 128. Denoise, yes please. Optics, if you have an RTX card. Rendering, I'll set it to 2048, although I won't be rendering anyway. All right, that's just it, and I'll just turn off the overlays. So cool. Can I still draw? Nope. Overlays are back on. I guess. Anyway, that was just a tiny bit of detour, because you know it's always good to work. It's always good to know how your animation is going to look, and based on that we can make some certain decisions. So yeah, anyway, this is our, yeah, so this is exactly where we will be moving on to the second phase of the animation. And one thing, if I add a transform node now, so you know, rotate it on the x-axis, you'll see that it doesn't really give a shit about everything we just did. It's like it doesn't care, you know, the pivot point and all that we just did. But the instance on points node does accept us wholeheartedly. So we'll just be rotating from here. So I'll add a Combinex Wizard node again over here, and you know what, these nodes as well. So control D or shift D, yes, shift D, and then alt P to unbind from the box or the frame that we created. And this time we want to move it on the x-axis. And right now, instantly you'll notice that things change, and I'll give you 2 seconds to think about why that happened. Time's up. So the reason why it happened is because, again, it is doing the animation from 0 to 30. So if you'll notice, the animation is here. It's taking place, and we don't want that. So we want the phase 2 animation, which is basically this whole thing. We want it to happen after the phase 1 animation is complete, which ends right after frame 30. So this animation should start at frame 30 and it should end. So let's keep the 30 frame gap consistent, so it will end or it will end at frame 30. So now if I hit play, everything should be right, and you can see the cube is flipping from one point to another. So that is cool. So right now I'm just gonna organize a few things, because it is just key in this whole thing, you know. Alright, cool. So didn't really do much, just added a few boxes, organized a few things over here. Nothing special going on. And this brings another, so if you've been paying attention, or you may have thought about this, you'll notice that a lot of these map range nodes are dependent. This one is especially dependent on this one, right? So if you have to change something, you'll have to go over here, take a look at what's going on over here, and then put the values over here. And that is kind of hectic. So since we are in GeoNodes, why not we make things more dependent on one another? So right now this frame, it tells us when the animation is going to start. So I'll just drag this out and add in a group input node, right? And this one will be the animation start any. My naming conventions are very bad in this, so I hope you guys have better naming conventions for these things. But anyway, all right, so I'll just shift this over here a bit, because we'll be needing that room. Cool. So this is going to be the start frame of our animation. Right, cool. And now we would like to tell that, hey, whatever the start frame is, we don't care, but whatever it is, make the animation happen over 30 frames right now. So let's just adding a math node. It's already set to add, so that's good. Let's just drag it out. Let's just make room for this and set the value over here to 30, and let's just connect that over here. So there you go, nothing has changed. We just made a parameter and made it so that whatever the start frame is, it will make sure that the animation, this animation lasts for 30 frame. And here's a cool thing, right? The end frame, so the end frame of this phase 1 animation is going to be the start frame of this phase 2 animation. So what I can do is just drag this over there, and that will make it so it will just make our lives so much easier. And again, we would like to maintain this 30 frame gap, so what we can do is just connect that over here, and I'll just call this any gap. Again, my naming conventions, they're just bad. All right, so I'll just drag this whole thing down so that it is just a tad bit easier to read, right? So phase 1, phase 2, and I'll just shift right click, drag, add a math node over here. It's already set to add, cool. Then I'll just add a group input node again over here, so you know, you can have 2 of these, and I'll connect the any gap over here, and I'll select this and hit control G. Cool. So now let's just connect this over here to the from max box. So now it doesn't matter when the animation starts or ends, this whole thing will be super dependent on each other, meaning that we don't have to change, we don't have to go back in the geo nodes to change a lot of things. To prove that, the animation will start at 0, that's cool, but the animation gap, let's say it should be 20 frames, right? So yeah, there you go. It just works, and it's pretty awesome, right? But let's say that you want some buffer period, right? So as it starts, I'll just put this over here. So as the phase 1 of the animation is complete, so right now it's set at 20, I'll just set it to 30. OCDs are kicking in. So after 30, you want it to have a buffer period, a pause period, where it just stays where it is and then moves on to the next animation. So to do that, it's pretty simple. Let's just add in a math node and put that before it is even, you know, connected over here. So this line added before it is even connected. You get it, you guys are smart, right? And this will now act as our buffer period. So what I'll do is just adding in a group input node and set this to pause. And by the way, you can set the whole thing, so these are floats, but since we are working with frames, they're all going to be integers. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. So now if I set this to 10, and if I set the animation gap to 20, and if I hit play, you'll notice that after frame 20, the cube stays exactly where it is for 10 frames, and after frame 30, it continues to do its second phase of the animation. And that, my friend, is, yeah, it's basically it for the animation, although the tutorial is not over yet because we have a lot to do, right? Because if you take a look, it does the thing, but it doesn't loop. And we'll get to that in a sec, but right now we have to do something cool, right? And that is going to be the modeling of this of the strip. I don't know what to call it, but it is a strip. In my sense, it's a strip. That's what it is. So to model that, what we need to do is just have these zigzag lines, right? So a step line, a step, yeah, that's just what it is, a step. So how do we do that? Well, there may be a lot of ways to do that. I did my research, and on Blender Stacks, some post, I really can't remember the name or whatever it is, but here's how you can do it. So basically what we need to do is add a mesh line node, which is this, and I'll just take a sip because I'm human. All right, and to this mesh line node, I'll just add in a instance on points node, obviously. Oh, I love this node, by the way. And to that, what I'm going to do is instance a grid. And you're like, what? Why? I'll explain that in a sec. So right now, nothing has changed, and you'll see that a bunch of grids are there on top of each other. And that is because we have an offset of 1 and we have 10 counts over here. So I'll just set the offset to 0, and I'll go on the top view. So go to the top view. And because I want the cube to, you know, go like this, so the cube will be following this pattern, which means the offset should be 1 meter over here and 1 meter over here, sorry, -1 right over here, and 1. Does that ring a bell? Yes, it is exactly what our cube scale is. So why not make that dependent as well? Because if we increase the cube scale, right, this will increase as this should increase. And you know what, I think I'm doing this a bit too early. We'll talk about the problem and then we'll fix the whole thing. But anyway, we have a grid right over here, and if I hit Shift Z, you can see it has a bunch of points, which is exactly what we want. So basically what I'm going to do is tell Blender to, you know what, delete this. Whoa, I think I just, all right, my bad. So basically keep this edge, delete this, right, delete this and delete this. So yeah, basically that's what I'm going to tell Blender. But how am I going to do that? Well, first of all, to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the X and Y vertices to just be 2. And so you'll notice that we don't have points over here, but that's cool. All right, so but to get access to these points and edges, right, what we need to do first is hit realized instances. All right, so now you can see over here we have access to the vertices, the edges, and etc., which will help us in deleting the remaining stuff, the remaining vertices. So again, this thing is what I am after. This I don't give a fuck about, right? I don't give a shit what they are, because I'm going to delete them. So this is the only thing I'm after. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to add a delete node and delete the geometry. That's it, tutorial over. Just kidding. All right, so first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in an index node. I'll just make this to show it to you guys or explain it to you a tad bit better. So basically what we're going to do is delete every other edge there is, right? If I'm right, okay, I'm a bit confused over here. I was when I was making the first tutorial as well, the first version of it anyway. So if I'm right, this edge has a number of 0, right? This edge has a edge number 2, 3. Sorry, yeah, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's how it goes. Or it is, I think it is 0, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's one of those. I think this is what it is, but basically we'll be telling it to, you know, do a mod of 2. So modulo of 2, meaning that everything that is divisible by 2 will stay and everything that is not divisible by 2 will get deleted. So to prove that I'm not an insane person, I'll just add a modulo function over here and set this count to 2. Let's just select this over here and put that into the selection. Fingers crossed, unmute, and that happens. Why is that happening? Well, because I have set this to point, meaning that points over here are deleted, and because they are deleted, we cannot really form these edges, right? So let me just draw this again. 0, 1, 2, 3, 3. So all we have to do here is set this to edge. Woo! I was right. Oh god, thank god. Otherwise it would have been so embarrassing. Oh Jesus Christ. Anyway, cool. This is good. This is good. So like we discussed and like I said, every other point which is divisible, every edge point that is divisible, or edge number that is divisible by 2 stays. Every edge that has a odd number, so like 3, 5, 7, they got deleted. Jesus fuck. All right, son of a, yeah. All right, cool. So now we get this pattern. So super duper cool. And what do we do next? Well, it's right now it's just a mesh. So sorry, it's just a line. It's just a point. So if you render right now, you won't see anything. So we need to convert this to mesh. So curve to mesh. Hey, it's already a mesh, right? We need to give it geometry. my bad. I'm not tripping. So it is a mesh right now, but we need to add a bit of a geometry. And the trick to do that, at least what I did, was I first converted this to mesh. So sorry, to curve. Mesh to curve. I swear I'm not high. I swear. All right. So mesh to curve, and then I'll convert this again to curve, sorry, to mesh. So curve to mesh. Why do I do that? Because when we convert it back, we get this option of profile curve. So now if I add a quadrilateral curve, hopefully that's how it's pronounced, let's just go over here, and now you can see it's like that. So I'll set the height and width to 0.2, and it is doing this weird thing. And why is this happening? Whoa. Why is this happening? Why is this not connected? All right, so the reason why this whole thing is not connected is because we may have deleted the points, right? So we may have deleted every odd number, the edges and all that, but it doesn't mean that they're connected together. Because remember, over here, these are just grids on the points. So we just instance a few grids on the points, meaning that they are not technically corrected. If I turn this off, it may look like they're connected, but basically they're just 2 points overlapping on one another. So what we have to do is basically merge these points, because that's what you do in modeling, right? So you just merge them. So how do you do that? Well, luckily there is a node called merge by distance. So you have to put it before the mesh is converted to curve. So I'll just put that over there, and ta-da, magic, yay. It's funny, right? I just selected fill caps, but anyway, yeah, so that's how you do that. And then right now it's smooth shaded, looks like shit, so SSS, set shade smooth, and uncheck that, so that looks a bit cute. And now basically, if you'll notice, if you may have seen in the video, you may notice that the strips are beveled, like it's beveled, yeah, the corners of it are beveled. So to do that, after the mesh is converted to a curve, yeah, so after the mesh has converted to the curve, in this point over here, we'll be adding in a fillet curve node, which basically bevels the curve's edges. You can see right over here. So set this to poly, set the count to something 9 or 10, don't really care, and then you can just mess around with that over here. And I think the height is a bit too much. All right, so that is cool. So let's just hit O, go back to our view, and now what we can do is simply add in a join geometry node, put that thing over here, connect that over here, and yay, magic. No, it's not over, trust me, but things are getting interesting, right? So those of you who've been following along, thank you. You are going to learn something one day, hopefully today. All right, so I'm just going to select all of this, hit Control J, and I'll just call it stripper. Sorry, strip, strip, strip. Yeah. I swear I'm not high. I don't do drugs, trust me, I don't. They're so expensive, you know. All right, anywho, so that is that. And right now, let's talk about the big issue, you know, and that is that if I, well, first of all, let's just move it, and I'll talk about the issue. So I'll added in, I'm not high, I swear, added a transform node, and I'll just move it something like this. So remember, the edge, right? So this strip has to be at the center of the x and y axis of the cube. So this will be on the 2, this will be 2, and let's just bring it down. You know, it's really up to you. I'll just set it to -6 on the y and 7 over here. It just has to be a integer over here again. Anyway, all right, cool. So now, you know what? Let's just first animate this, all right, and then we'll get to the scaling issue. All right, so I just want to get the good stuff out first, because this thing will take a tad bit time for me to explain, and then the animation, it will just won't make sense. Anyway, how do we animate this, right? The growth animation, how do we do that? Well, for those of you who have messed around with curves, you already know the answer. For those of you who didn't, well, honey, there is a node called trim curve, right? And yeah, you just put that thing over there. All right, let me just make some room, right? Oh, whoa, something like that. All right, that's cool. And now if I go up to the top view, and now if I set the start or end, you can see that it, you know, it just trims itself. Yeah, and that's great. So how do we animate this? Well, for those of you watch my tutorials or even followed along this tutorial, you know exactly what I'm going to do. So let's just, you know what, let's just make it on our own. Duplicating will be a mess. So let's just add in a scene time node to that on the frame socket. Let's just drag it out and add a map range node. See how fast I am? So let's just add that, and I think we can directly connect that over here. But you know what, before connecting that, let's just set, or let's just see the values that we'll be needing. So let's just bring the end closer, right? So holding shift, and yeah, I think this is pretty cool, right? So something like this. Make sure it is at the center of it, right? So this point, so 0.698. So let's just set the to main value to 0.698, and at the end at frame 60, let's just increase this, and let's just set this to something like, yeah, this doesn't, yeah, it's getting chunky over here, but since we won't be seeing that, it doesn't make sense to fix that, and I also have no idea how to fix that. But you know, this excuse works in my favor. So 0.8 it is, so 0.8, that is cool. And again, it needs a start and end frame. So the start frame, well, we have that, so let's add a group input node and set the start and it over here. And the end frame, well, this right over here, the phase 2 and the phase 2 rotation already has. So the from max box, whatever is feeded in here, is the end frame of the animation. So I'll just drag this out and hopefully get over here. All right, so now if I connect that over here, and now if I view it from this point, hopefully, all right, so we do see something over here. So let's just mess around with the values. It's just that, you know, you just gotta keep messing. So I think 0.72, yeah, right, I think that will do. All right, yeah, I really don't see the strip's bottom. Jesus, I should name things better. Okay, so I don't see that, and I think this works just fine for you. Of course, the values will be different depending on what the parameters are, but basically that's how you fix it. So I'm just going to select this group input node, hit Ctrl H, so that the inputs that are not being used get hidden. Cool, and take a sip of water. And that's cool. So basically, the strip animation is done. And now let's get to the bigger issue. So if I set my cube scale to 2, you'll notice that it doesn't really work. So why is that? Well, it's simple. It is because the scale does not match. That's why it is. So how do we get the scale to match, right? So first of all, the offset here is 1 1, and the grid scale is also 1 1, so we need to increase that as well. So as we increase this cube scale, we have to increase the offset as well as the grid scale. So let's just add in a group input node, and we have the cube scale right over here. So I'll just add in a Combinex Wizard over here, and I'll make yeah, I don't think the second one is necessary. So let's just connect the cube scale over here on the x-axis, so right over here, but you can see it requires a minus point before that. So I'll just set this to multiply and set it to -1. Cool. And then let's just connect that over here on the the y-axis, because that is just positive. So connect that over here, and I'll just simply connect the cube scale over here on the x and y, because that is 1. So now, does that fix our problem? No, it does something weird, but at least the scale is increasing. So that will take it. We'll take that. All right. So basically, right, what we want is, as the cube scale increases, so as it increases, right, so let's just set this to 2, we want it to be over here. So we want this transform to keep on moving it to the right, so that this stays at the center. So how do we do that? Well, you know what, let's just first nullify this. All right, and let's just start from the ground up. So I'll just add in a Combinex Wizard node. Oh, hopefully I'll explain this much better. So right now we have this cube scale which is set to 1. So instead of going all the way over there, let's just put it over here. All right, sorry about that. Had to attend something. So yeah, that was a weird edit, But anyway, so yeah, here we are. We will be making sure that as the scale increases, the strip stays exactly where it is, and the scale of it also increases with the cube, and the animation remains intact. Alright, cool. So to do that, or to basically let it, so in order for the strip to be exactly where it is, the answer to that, I'm this time I'm not going this time. But the answer is basically, so right now the scale of the cube is set to 2, and if I now, right, connect this over here, this, it just goes right over there. And for that, if I change this cube scale to 3 or something like 5, this works just fine. But you can see how thin this is, or it's there, right? We can manipulate that, we can change the width and whatnot of this strip. But the problem occurs when you try to modify the Y position, right? So Y position, because right now it is exactly where it is. So if I try to move it over here, right, then it means I'll have to add a math node over here again and move it along, something like that. So I think this one will be 10 and this one has to be minus 9. So there you go, and even that is not good, so I think somewhere over here. So yeah, minus 10, right? And now if I again increase it, it just doesn't work fine, because right now we are adding values to it, and we don't have to add. What we need to do is have it be a multiple of something. So based on certain percentage, this whole thing should happen. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'll just screw that and set this to 0 as well, and I'll set this to be a multiple, and currently it is set to 0. So of course whatever incoming value we get, it is being multiplied by 0, and anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So here we are getting 0. But if I set this to 1, it stays there. 2, it goes there, and the cube scale is also set to 5. So I'll just set that to 2, and I'll set the multiple to 1 as well. So currently we won't be having any issues with this, but let's just, you know what, let's just create an integer out of this, because we'll need that. So integer, and I'll set this to 1. So as you notice, as the percentage increases, or as the integer increases of this multiple for the x, the cube goes, or it increases in this case by 2 meter, by 2 meter, by 2 meter. So basically we have to do the same thing but for the y-axis. So I'll just duplicate this right over here, put that thing over here, and this thing over here. So connect that over there. So right now it is doing something weird, and we really don't want that. So let's try something 2. It just goes away, meaning we have to now input negative values over here. So -2, whoa, that's a bit too much, right? So that's weird. So I think if I put -1 over here, it just does that, and 0, it stays there. So there's a pattern over here. So let me increase my step just a tad bit, and I'll increase my cube scale to, let's just say 3, right? So now if this is 2, right, this has to be -1. Are you getting it? So now if I set the cube scale to 4, it just stays exactly where it is. So now it doesn't matter what is going on over here, as long as the incoming value we're putting in over here is it's a negative. But what about this? So this step allows us to move things, right? So if I connect that over here, it just doesn't it doesn't work, because first of all it requires a -1, and this is 2. So how do we convert this 2 to -1? Well, first of all we add a math node. It's set to add. Let's just set this to subtract, and let's just subtract by 1, right? And if I connect that over here, it still doesn't work because it still requires a negative sign. So that's pretty simple. Let's just duplicate this over here, connect that over here, and now if I connect this over here, nothing changes. But now if I change this integer value, you can see that the strip goes along the path, right? And it also respects the scale change that we are putting it through. So this right here, this integer value is very important. So this basically will serve as a step. Yeah, so that's what it is going to do. So shift right click drag and add, or just, you know what, you can just connect this thing right over here. Okay, May I try again? Nope. May I? Okay, thank you. And let's just go over here, select that input. Let's just call this step. And fun thing you can do is add another parameter, set that to be a text. So I think that's a string, and bring it up, right? And I won't put anything over here. So now we have a blank space over there, and I can just type in strip. So now everything below this will be a parameter of the strip. So that's just an easy thing to do. And right now it is, well, it's a float. So let's just set that to an integer, which is somewhere over here. And I'll set that to something, yeah, something like this. So let's just bring it to 7. And I think that is exactly where the animation is. So if I play the animation, yeah, it is just and perfectly fine. So yeah, that's the thing, I was trying to explain, and it is what it is. It's not that complicated, but I really hope I did a better job at explaining this. Not really sure, but if you got the point, you got the point. So select all of that, hit Ctrl J, F2, and strip math. that's one way to explain that whole thing, isn't it? And now this is the secret juice to making it loop, because as you see, it does do its thing, but it doesn't loop, because as it goes to the end, it jumps back over here. So how do we get it to loop? How do we make it? How do we just show it that instead of it just going back to its position, how do we make sure that the camera follows this so that it looks like it is just continuously flipping and going ahead? Well, the trick to do that is, well, we just have to bring this, or we just have to make sure that this whole thing, this whole animation stays exactly where it is. So sorry, this cube should not move at all, but as you can see, it moves. So how do we stop it from moving? Well, basically, over this course of the animation, we have to animate it so that as it's moving forward, it comes back over here. It keeps on coming back over there. So it doesn't move, right? And how do we do that? Well, it's simple. All we have to do is add in a transform node over here, just like that. And at frame 60, well, this is exactly where the cube is at the start, and this is where it's at the end. So this, sorry about that, this part right here is where we want the cube to be. So I think -1 on the y-axis and +1 on the z-axis. There you go. So this is exactly where we want the cube to be. So over the course of time, how do we do that? You guys already know the answer to that question. So scene time node, connective map range node, it's set to value. The start frame, well, group input node, that over here, animation start, start any, I think it's called, and hit Control H to hide those unnecessary inputs, and select this right over here, the phase 2 animation, and connect that to the from max box, right? And of course we'll need a Combinex Wizard node right over here, right? And well, for the x-axis, what does it have to be? It has to be 1, so from 0 to 1. That's cool. For the y, it has to be the same, but it has to have a minus sign in front of it. So select the map range node, Control Shift D, and let's just add a minus sign over here, and let's just connect that to the y-axis, and then let's just connect that over here. And if we hit play from over here, you'll notice that it ends up exactly at that spot. And now if I view this from the camera, and if I disable the overlays, and if I play it back, you'll notice that it gives the illusion that it's just moving forward, it doesn't stop. And now it looks a bit junky, so first of all, I'll just select my camera, and I'll just move this on the x-axis. Again, you can mess around with it all the more you like. And one thing that you can do is the phase 1 and phase 2 animations, they all have a map range node each. So in their interpolation type, just set this to smooth step. That, trust me, will do the trick. So take a look at that. Yep, it just makes it looks like it has an easing and ease out, I suppose. And since we are using linear over here for the main loop over here, it means that the start and the end frame, they have the same position, right? And we don't want that. So it's a tiny bit. If you play it back, you really won't see the difference, but this So start and the end frame, they all have the same position. And the principle of looping is that when this happens, you just subtract 1 from the end frame, so that, well, it's just more smooth. Maybe it's just my OCDs, maybe 60. If I didn't minus 1 over there, it just looks fine to me. But just, subtracting 1, that's kind of the key thing when you're working with linear interpolation modes. So another thing that you might be facing an issue over here is that, okay, let's just select the cube over here, the geonodes thing, and now over here you can see that if I set the animation gap or the pause, or if I change any of these parameters, it means I have to always go over here, calculate the math myself, and then put the value over here, right? And that's just stupid. And currently I don't think we can copy the values that we have over here. So it says 60 over here, and I can just copy this as a driver and paste it over here, -1. But fortunately there is a way. So over here we have the group output node, so I'll just connect that, or actually I'll just connect it from this point to the group output node, and over here we have a output. So I'll just name this to end any frame. And now over here in the output attributes, we have a end any frame with a blank. All right, so now here if I just type in end any frame again, and you can just type anything you want, this is just me typing the same thing again. If I put that thing and if I press enter, take a look at this right over here in the spreadsheet, we get the exact frame at which the animation is ending. Now if I set the pause to, let's just set 20, you can see now it has changed and it tells us exactly when the animation is going to end. So now over here you can just type in 79. So whatever the value is, just do it -1 and just type in 79. So I'm just going to keep the pause at 0, which means my animation is ending at frame 60, so 59. And yeah, that is it. Anyway, I think that is it. That is the tutorial. You can expose a lot of factors. For example, you can expose this right over here, so this quadrilateral thing, and a bunch of other stuff. It's really up to you. So let me quickly show this file right over here, right? And I'll just quickly go over the shading of the whole thing, right? So hopefully this will load. I'll hit save because, yeah, my luck, I know my luck, right? So let's just go to the rendered mode. So for the shaders, right, let's just select this. They are not here. Are they applied over here? Nope. So we have a bunch of shaders. So what I'll do is I'll simply add an object over here, a cube, right? Move it up, and while the cube is selected, I'll assign it all the materials that I have over here. All right, so for the cube material, which is this gray thing over here, I just have a base color set to this, and I have upped the roughness and added a tad bit of subsurface to it. That's really it. And for the strip, it's just metallic specular tint all the way up, roughness all the way down, set this to something golden color, and that's it. So yeah, this is metal, this is that, the background has just a white color, and basically that's it. Yeah, so yeah, that's the entire animation. This is how the node trail looks like. The modifier of course could look a tad bit better, but again, it's up to you. Since this is a tutorial, I'm not going to replug the whole things again. But right now, let's just go over the parameters. This cube scale, no matter how big it is, the animation will work just fine. So I recommend exposing this parameter so that you can adjust the width and height of the strip. The start frame will determine when the animation will start. The gap will determine how long it takes for one rotation to complete, and the pause will determine how much buffer should be there between the phase 1 and phase 2. So between those two animations, how long should the cube stay still? And that's it. So that's the tutorial. It has been a long one, but I think it was necessary because I needed to explain a lot of things, and most of you, I believe, are beginners, because why would pros watch this tutorial channel? Anyway, yeah, I keep saying anyways, but yeah, that's it. Hope you learned something new today. If you do end up following along, thank you so much. This really means a lot to me, and I would love to see your renders, so send them to me on Twitter, Instagram. You can even mail it to me. That would be weird, but you can do that, right? I do weird things all the time, and it may have looked like I was on crack or I was smoking something. It wasn't. This is just me being me. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much for following along. I would love to see your works, so send them to me, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, be infinite.